ready to get started. Welcome to the World Work today. And the World Work is, this is the 7th episode that we're in, chapter 7 of the book, The Government of Eden. So using that today also very much so, and it is great what is being brought into our consciousness to take another look at it, to take another look at what is going on. What is going on? And welcome everyone. So, what is going on? You tell me, world workers, what is going on? It's just like this. It's like, what is my reality? If I turn on the news or look at my news app or anywhere, I'm say overwhelmed with all kinds of impressions, with all kinds of ideas, all kinds of concepts, all kinds of opposites, and on and on and on. It seems to be amazing, rampant. And so what is that then? Is that my reality? No, it is not. But it is very much my reality too at the same time. And I'm asked not to do anything with it, not to defend myself, not to attack it, not to do anything with it. This is basically the story of today, which is called like the enormous paradox that you find yourself in your awakening. The whole world that you have around you, that you are reacting to, that you're experiencing in every step that you take, in every breath that you breathe, like all this is confirming continuously that you seem to be in time, in a certain moment in time, in a certain culture, in a certain location, in a certain Milky Way somewhere. And we're being taught by Joel, by wherever that comes from you. That's in that sense purely the same story, whether Jesus is telling you or Joel Goldsmith is telling you, or it is the same story. It's like none of it is real. While it is my reality, I have to deal with it. I cannot ignore it. I'm in the middle of a paradox. I'm in the middle of, seems to be like two worlds. Now what? Now what? I experience pain. I experience illness, discomfort, lack, limitation, broken relationships. You name it. All the stuff that keeps our minds occupied for a moment at least. It seems very much that that's my reality. I have to do something with it. I cannot completely ignore it. I cannot diss it or put my head in the sand and say like, well, it's not there. No, I have to deal with it in some kind of way. Now, it wouldn't hurt, right? It wouldn't hurt to get some guidance in this total mess, you could say, that I find myself in on a daily basis. I need help here, obviously, because I don't seem to be able to get out of it. I wake up in the morning and right there I'm in the middle of it. I'm in the paradox of knowing that there's an all-loving God who created everything perfect, and here's my not so perfect world, which I seem to be running around in. So like I said, I need help with that in order to deal with it. Do I need to change this world? No. If I do that, then it doesn't work either. I tried it. I tried to save the ones that I loved, and at the same time, the ones I loved, I lost. I didn't want to get sick, but I did get sick. I lost my child, but I didn't want to lose the one that I loved. I did, and that. Everything happened. I'm totally involved in a reality. To me, it's totally real up to the moment that something occurs. It is totally real. I have to deal with it. I cannot ignore it. I have to pay taxes to the ones who's asking for taxes. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to protect my house against a hurricane. I have to, or whatever is going on. It's like, no, don't think that this is an illusion in that sense. It is not an illusion. No, it's a total paradox. You have to deal with this, and at the same time, there's no reality connected to it in the spiritual sense of self. No, it is the nature of error. You have to understand what's going on, otherwise you're completely locked in it and will forget about God, because this occupies all your attention. So luckily we're here then. Luckily we are here and get some beautiful inspiration. And this inspiration is taking us out of this story. There is this world I deal with. I deal with this world. I'm taking responsibility for what I see and what I give to it, like everything I give to it. But at the same time, when I go on my knees, when I'm becoming quiet, when I start to meditate, when I hand everything over to Spirit, when I allow myself to be completely still, something occurs. I cannot deny it. Something occurs. And this something is stirring in me. Truth is literally stirring within my consciousness. Something is occurring. Something is opening up. Suddenly I experience a relief that did come out of the blue. I had no idea. Suddenly it is there. I'm not swallowed by my fears. No, suddenly there's a recognition, there's light, there's something occurring that I've been asking for, screaming for, praying for all of this. So this is exactly the situation that we're dealing with. Now, this release of temporal release, you could say, so that another experience is possible, is something we're preparing. We're getting ready for that over and over. We keep preparing that. We actually are very much patient to let that occur, because it's not by our doing that can come to us. It is a matter of being open to receive it and actually receiving it in the moment that it's given. And also not ignoring it, that it is there in every situation that I actually find myself in. So that's a lot of things to do. That's why it takes a moment it seems to take a moment to let this occur. While it could never leave you at the same time. Your release is right there with you. Like, we know that I and my Father are one. We know this as a statement, as a concept, and the experience. We are touched by that experience, more and more and deeper. It's like I and my Father are one, and no one comes unto the Father but by me, saith Christ. Jesus Christ is telling you that. So it's like this is another activity that is going on. Recognizing the Christ within me, but how do I do that? How do I recognize that Christ within me? I recognize it literally by giving it. This is our practitionership. We come into an healing moment together by individually accepting the Christ as our guide, basically as our whole mind. Accepting that, in that acceptance, there can only be healing, since it is in fact a reflection of your celestial origin. Now, this is also very good to know. Nobody comes to the Father but by me. Now, where is that happening? That is not a Christ standing there somewhere. That is not a Christ where we're waiting for to return after 2,000 years of not being there, the second coming, It takes a while, it seems like. If I believe that that's something that's outside of me coming to me, I can wait for a very long time. No, that's occurring in me right here and right now. It cannot be any other place and other time. Like I said, that's a lot. That's a lot to see. If I had to put that all together in my experience of myself, it would simply not happen. So that's why there is help. Now this help, we're going to take another look at that today. This help is available, and what is certainly very helpful is becoming quiet and receptive to receive that. So that is the part where we step into now, and that is the meditation. My kingdom is intact, is the expression. My kingdom is intact. And these are words from Joel, received by Joel, and from the parenthesis in Eternity, chapter 26. But it's like a paragraph or so, but it's very beautiful and fits perfectly into what we're looking at today. So. This world is not to be feared, or hated, or loved. This is the illusion, and right where the illusion is the kingdom of God, my kingdom. My kingdom is the reality. This that my eyes see or my ears hear, this is the superimposed counterfeit, not existing as a world, but as a concept of temporal power. My kingdom is intact. My kingdom is the kingdom of God. My kingdom is the kingdom of the children of God. And my kingdom is here and now. All that exists as temporal universe is without power. I need not hate it, fear it, or condemn it. I need only understand it.
Mon royaume est intact. Ce monde n'a pas à être craint ou haï ou aimé. C'est l'illusion. Et juste là où est l'illusion est le royaume de Dieu. Mon royaume. Mon royaume est la réalité. Ceci que mes yeux voient ou que mes oreilles entendent. Ceci est la contrefaçon surimposé, n'existant pas en tant qu'un monde, mais en tant qu'un concept de pouvoir temporel. Mon royaume est intact. Mon royaume est le royaume de Dieu. Mon royaume est le royaume des enfants de Dieu. Et mon royaume est ici et maintenant. Tout ce qui existe comme univers temporel est sans pouvoir. Je n'ai pas besoin de le haïr, de le craindre ou de le condamner. Je n'ai besoin que de le comprendre.
All right. So thank you so much for joining in the meditation. And this is, confirming in that sense. It confirms again. It's like, okay, you find yourself in the middle of this paradox, as I call it. It's like you seem to be in a world. There seem to be things happening. You respond to it. You do things with it. You wake up with your feet on the ground. You have a body. You do all these things. Everything worked out pretty good until something happened. Everything worked out pretty good. You managed until things started to happen, and that's basically, say, many times the start of your awakening process or transformational process, you could say. Like everything is all right until I lose my partner, until I lose my child, until I see that there's sickness in the family. I didn't see that coming. Or this happened or that happened. I lose my job. Who knows what happens. Like we all have our stories in which we come to, in fact, discover what is going on here. Everything seems to be all right up to a certain point. Or you can also say it's like you're always one telephone call away from disaster in this paradox. And the paradox part is still knowing that there's something else, like there's an all-loving God who created you perfectly, but that's not your daily experience of yourself up to a certain point, of course. And so this is what Joel points to in the chapter 6 of 7, is it? In chapter 7 of the book. In fact, it's like whatever happens, whatever you see, whatever seems to be going on, don't fight it and don't defend it. Don't defend yourself. Don't attack. There's like, no, otherwise what you do is in fact place yourself into this human existence. That's what you do. So don't fight it. Don't defend yourself. Now, I don't know about you, but it might happen that I defend myself, and that probably happens to you sometimes too. It's like before you know it, you're defending yourself. Any kind of thing that comes your way, the first response would be to defend yourself or explaining yourself why you're doing it, which is the same thing. Like you always have a reason why you do the things that you do with your good conscience. You want to survive, in fact, or continue what you're doing. In fact, perpetuating this existence. But see, even that, if you take a really good look at that, it's like if only that idea of perpetuating something that is temporal will still be temporal. In other words, I can try to live as healthy as I probably can and eat as healthy, do my sport, do my this, do my that, but it will only perpetuate so far. How far is that? Until I get sick and die, you could say. Until that happens to me, that I'm literally in a death episode. I'm dying. And like I come to the end of my life, you could say. Now this is human existence. This is not what we're called to do. It's like this is not what we're called to do. And when we listen to Joel is pointing it out to us. It's like, don't resist evil. Don't fight it. Don't defend it. Don't think that this is it, in the sense that you have to do something with it in order to maintain it or to sustain it in some kind of way. That's not the case. Now, here in our practice, because we're say advanced students, you could say, in our advanced practice, we know this. In fact, we walk up against this all the time. Like every day it comes back to us. There's a world. I know that is no reality. I know this by concept. I know. And more I will receive experiences that take me out of this for a moment, and then I return back. But the thing is that I'm not resisting it. The thing is I'm not defending myself. I'm not going to try to make the sick healed. I'm not trying to do anything in that sense. I'm not trying to do anything to make this a better place. I'm not on missions. I'm not on the crusade, as Joel says it. Like I'm not on a crusade. I'm not raising the sword. No, I'm putting the sword up. Like I'm taking it away. I'm not going to defend. I'm not going to attack in order to make my position or make my statement here. That's not what I do. And this is a difficult part of the process, because your natural tendency as a human being is to do that. You were taught to do that. Now you don't do that. So what happens? Now, this is really interesting, and you recognize this for sure, just as I do. It's like in fact, when you start not doing these things, what happens with you? Are you starting to feel good? No, you don't feel good about not doing these things, because you're literally feeling that you're failing, that you're feeling that, before you know it, you enter into a depression. Even that, I speak from my own experiences. Like that had happened to me two times. I really wanted to make this a better place. I really had my goals set on allowing this change so that the world will be better. Something like this. I went for that. I gave all of that until I exhausted myself in doing so. So this is the same with you, of course. Like you are trying to make this connection between this lower state of the paradox, perception-based, material-based, with an idea that you are this, what you think you are, and trying to bring God down here in order to make this happen here. And that's going to fail over and over and over and over and over again until you learn the lesson that that is not the way to go. Now, literally, it needs to be different. That is like, no one comes unto the Father but by me. Like I have to allow this Christ in me to awaken. I have to allow myself. In fact, I need to start loving myself before I even start loving my neighbor. I have to allow this God experience to come to me as my only goal, as my only purpose for being present here, is that allowing that to occur, so that I can also recognize that in my brother. Or if I recognize it first in my brother, that's fine too. It's like, why are there others, so to speak? Why are there others? This is literally a lesson, that there are others. There seem to be others. Well, they are not others if you join with them in a oneness experience. Then you recognize that there is only one. Up to that point, you have a lesson to learn. As long as you think there are two of you, then you have a lesson to learn. And it's not that there are others. Now it's like, here's the possibility to recognize the Christ in your brother. When you recognize the Christ in your brother, it cannot be but that you recognize that in yourself at the same time, because there's literally one of us. Now this is the healing procedure that's being offered, in fact, in everything that Joel tries to express to you, and that I'm expressing to you in this. Like that is coming back all the time. That's the only reason why there appear to be brothers, or that there appear to be someone else. If I am allowing myself to receive my brother, to love him with all of my heart, just like I love God, in that moment I have a recognition with the Christ within myself. Literally, he represents my soul. And in my total heart experience of love for my father, for my brother, I recognize there's only one of us. It's my subjective, singular experience of reality. Now this is the procedure that you're in. So all the attempts that you try in trying to bring the two together, is like that will fail, because this is about recognition and being. So it has nothing to do with trying to make one of two. Now recognizing there's only one would do it. Now that cannot be if you don't include yourself completely into that and leave yourself outside with, yes, I love my brother, thinking that I need to forgive him or in some kind of way so that you can say like, I love you. No, that's not even far enough. You go further than that. It's a recognition that there's only one of us. If I see the beauty of you as my brother, I literally dissolve into you. That is the case. That is what is occurring. In that, we recognize our common source and in fact are resurrecting. This is what Jesus is telling us. Like no one comes to the Father but by me. If I recognize the Christ in you, I'm melting into that, into my Father, literally, into the heart of God. That is the occurrence. So what does that have to do with trying to make this place of temporal powers a better place? There's nothing to do with it. So it's not why you're there. It's not what you're supposed to do. So your purpose lies purely in accepting this Christhood within yourself and sharing that with your brother up to the point that you recognize that there's only one of us. So a very joyous lesson and absolutely great to practice too. So that's truly a miracle. It's like that was the miracle of oneness that we discovered in the retreat too. It's like that's exactly where it happens. So Joel tells us this. Putting up the sword. And that's an interesting term, of course. It's like you put it back into where it came from. You're not going to use it, is what it means. You're not going to use the sword. So you can throw it away too, but just to keep it with yourself, you put it up. Now here's Isaiah 54 from the New King James Version. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is from me, says the Lord. So no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Like not by the sword will any change occur. And we continue. Liberty, this is literally from the book, The Government of Eden. Liberty is not gained by fighting or by crusading for it, but by keeping it sacred and secret within our consciousness, living it and granting it to others, and thereby watching it spread to the world. Consciousness must be lifted out of its humanhood, out of its belief that self-preservation is the first law of human nature, into the Master's idea of loving another as we love ourselves, and more especially must it accept the revelation that no man on earth is our Father. There is one Father and one great brotherhood. So consciousness must be lifted out of its humanhood, out of its belief that self-preservation, defense and attack ideas, is the first law of human nature. You have to be lifted out of it, into the Master's idea of loving another as we love ourselves. And more especially, must it accept the revelation that no man on earth is our Father. There is one Father and one great brotherhood. Now here we come to the world work. The world work in which the Infinite Way students engage is not fighting evil persons or evil conditions. It is withdrawing power from them, and the students become such clear transparencies that the Christ can flow through their consciousness and dissolve the pictures of sense. We cannot have any degree of mystical or spiritual consciousness as long as we have good and evil, two powers, personalization of good and evil, or consciously or unconsciously battling evil, trying to overcome it, whether to heal disease or fear or sin or lack. Thank you, Father. Besides God, there is no other power. As you learn to relax and give up the struggle against error, you will learn the real nature of error. Yeah, like I said, as you learn to relax and give up the struggle against error, which is basically the training that we're in. It's not the thing that you do once and then it's fine. No, this comes back to you on a daily basis. You learn to relax and give up the struggle against error. You will learn the real nature of error. Its illusory nature, the fact that error exists as a belief accepted in thought and then fought. It exists as an appearance which we look upon as a reality, an entity. It is almost like looking at the horizon out on the ocean and saying, I don't think I'll take the Lorelei. It will run into that horizon, and then where will I be? So you see, this is what Joel says. In fact, he says the same thing with his own words, with the words that came to him. It's like, you learn to relax and give up the struggle against error. Now this is huge. So that's why I want to say, put a light on it and emphasize it. It's like, this is huge. And because the thing that you constantly do as a human being is correcting error. Correcting error. You want to learn a lesson from the past experience. There's no lesson to learn except to let it go, to let this past go. There's nothing to learn from the past. No, if I learn something from the past, what do? I'm going to use it in the future. What is that? This whole thing is perpetuating it further in time until what? Until I die. I keep bringing in my well-learned lessons. Like, I bring in my lesson for the future, for future use, not realizing that I'm actually perpetuating my past into the future until I die. In fact, that's the story. So this needs to be dislodged. This needs to be, say, broken, you could say, in your ways of doing. That's why this is such a tough process. Because the tendency to learn a lesson and put it into the future for future use, it's like, yeah, look at your backpack. It's literally full with learned lessons. Well, that will not happen again to me because, and then you have a reason. What is that? A defense. What does Joel say? Don't defend yourself. Like, in defenselessness is your safety, not in attack, not in defending, not in preparing yourself for future harm, not in looking that way, but setting yourself free in this present moment because my kingdom is intact. It is working perfectly right now. Come home. Like, literally, you need to be lifted out of this whole story. And lifted out of this whole story is an inner affair. It's happening within you, and you're in great company. It is not that you're alone, being lifted up alone into some kind of vacuum. No, you're going to be lifted up by the most loving one that you have been looking for. Literally, by yourself, by your Christ self. So that it's going to be an encounter that you didn't expect to be that loving. So it's like, whatever the horror stories may be of why you think you have to go through, dark night of the soul or whatever it seems to be, like, this dark night of the soul is nothing more than you leaving the tendency to defend and attack for a moment. You have an idea that you die because literally that is the case. You, with your concepts about yourself, are dying in order to be lifted up, in order to experience a whole new experience that has nothing to do with the time-space duality and the opposites that come with it, and the timeline that comes with it. So I wanted to emphasize this today really clearly, because this comes back in every healing request, and absolutely, totally get it. This is the lesson to be learned, you could say. Like, don't defend yourself, don't attack, don't explain yourself, don't learn a lesson from the past. None of that is here. There's no lesson to be learned in that sense, except the lesson of letting the idea go that there's hope for this sense of self, this made-up sense of self. There's no hope for that, and you still give everything to it, sure. You can still be a totally loving being in it, yeah, sure, absolutely. But you don't want any of it. You don't want any of it. You set no demands on it. You don't want any of it. So this is the practice. Yeah, it is so great. I love it. I love it. So it's like it's an inclusion of this. I'm not saying that I'm denying this. This paradox, you could say, of this human sphere of happenings. I'm not denying it. No, totally including it, taking responsibility for it, but not wanting anything of it, not having my desires there, that it would give me something that I need. If I confirm a need, then I'm in hell, because I will have more needs and I will want more all the time. So it will not fill the hole that's created by an idea of lack. You have no needs here. So literally every need is fulfilled. Even before you ask, the need is already fulfilled. Now, where am I going to ask for? I don't need to ask for anything. This is why we say this. You don't need to ask for anything in prayer. This is about realization. This is about recognition. This is about allowing yourself through the dark night, whatever needs to occur for it, whatever you need to go through it, it will not change your goal of, say, in fact, opening up to your reality about what is totally real, what you are, in joining with your Christ mind, you know. So that is what, in fact, what Joel shares with us today in the book too. Like even in this little couple of paragraphs that I use, it's like you see that come back. There's very clear instruction, in fact, but you don't even realize the incredibleness of it, because you think like, oh yeah, I shouldn't be doing that. It's like, no. First, it comes with the recognition that you're always doing it. Basically, you're always defending yourself. Oh, that is a tendency that is normal to the human race, you could say, to the humanhood. So you have to be aware that that's the occurrence. Then you start to give that up. Yeah, you start to give that up. Now there's another part available. I can be lifted out of this because I lose my attachment to this defense mechanism. I literally allow a new experience to come to me, and it will come, and it did come, and it is very effective and life-changing, absolutely. But that goes hand in hand with what is possible right now for you in that to experience, and what are you willing to receive in this instant. So you could say like, okay, bring it on. Like any kind of difficulty, any kind of whatever I need to go through, bring it on. Because I want to go through this in order to awaken to all of it, recognize the truth behind it all. Since this kingdom is right here with me, I want to experience that and not any limitation. So now bring in all the limitation that you can possibly show me. So because I'm willing to let that be changed within me in order to come to a full realization of the truth of who I am. This is in fact what Joel demonstrates and gives to us and shares in the way that he expresses it. So also with the video, the audio that we're going to listen to, putting up the sword, And I sent out an email with this tape too, but also with a PDF with the same title, but it doesn't fit the video. So you might have recognized that. At least one of you did. Yeah, so it is a great transcript anyway, so that works too. But now we're going to listen to this tape, putting up the sword. And so recognize what I shared with you just a moment ago. You'll see it. It's just beautiful. Thank you so much.
And there is a need. As a matter of fact, that is probably one of the great features of family life, that families do sacrifice for each other. Families do share with each other. Families do provide for each other. And therefore, the only reason that we here do not have one common pocketbook is that in your mind, I have a mother and father of my own, and you have one of your own, and therefore we are not of the same family. Now, this is even more true in our national and racial life, where the Hebrew believes that he is God's chosen people, and he has the one true God. He has had since Moses' time. And the Christian says, no, I have been given the God of Jesus Christ, and this is the one true God. The only thing is there are 10,000 Christian sects all saying, but you're all wrong. It's only we who have Jesus Christ, God. You've got some kind of an imitation. And so it is that even among the Christians, they won't agree that they have the same God, the same Father, the same principle, and so it would go as you go around the world. Now, the miracle that takes place when you or I, as individuals, begin to perceive that Jesus was teaching a truth when he said, call no man on earth your father, for one is your Father which is in heaven. One. We have only one Father, therefore we be brethren. We are brothers and sisters. We are members of one household. Well, you know that even to perceive this in the tiniest degree opens us to each other. It isn't only that we open our purses to each other, we open our homes to each other, we open our confidences to each other, we open our businesses to each other. We begin literally to share, even if we catch in a tiny degree that we are of one household, one family. And you can find this is one of my joys in traveling, that wherever I find an individual, and I find many, who have caught a glimpse of that, and they're not all Christians, and they're not all infinite way students, and they're not all metaphysicians, yet these, whom I have in mind, have glimpsed that there is but one creative principle of life, one God, and the same God that made roses made tulips, and the same God that made tulips made blades of grass. They are all of one family, and so are we. Now, the problems that disappear out of your life and mine, speaking only of this room full, the problems that disappear out of our lives, the moment we begin to perceive that this is a literal truth, that there is only one Father in this room, invisible, but one Father, and equally my Father and your Father, and that we are members of one household, of one family. You would be surprised, traveling this world and meeting Infinite Way students in different parts of the world, to see how nearly we are living a family life, how nearly we are living this life of brotherhood and sisterhood, and sharing and giving and cooperating and forgiving and understanding and upholding each other in problems, not only in sunshine, but in problems, more especially in problems. And you would see that as it has been possible to demonstrate that whether we were in the States or whether we were in England or Africa or Australia, Switzerland, Germany, Sweden, wherever we have been among members of our own family, and we have been treated that way, and we have witnessed this, and we have witnessed something more. There are students of the Infinite Way who travel from country to country and who meet students in different countries. And if only you could hear the experiences that take place, well, it would sound like testimonial meeting night, and we don't want to make it that. But that's the way it would sound to you, because that's actually the way it is. The experiences these students are having in traveling in different countries, meeting the students and finding the welcome, finding the hospitality, finding the understanding, comparing notes, sharing experiences. It's really been an eye-opener. And when you stop to think that this could be universal, it doesn't have to be limited just to Infinite Way students. In fact, it isn't. The same relationship exists between other groups. But when you stop to think that it could be universal, first of all, by a common acknowledgement on the part of every religious leader, that regardless of which church edifice you walk into or which you stay out of, there still is only one creative principle or one God, and therefore anything you do to another, you're doing to your own family. Later, as you go further in the spiritual studies and demonstration, you learn how it is that everything you do to another, whether for good or evil, you're doing unto yourself. And it is for this reason that many people are suffering many of the fatalities of the world, suffering many of the sins, many of the diseases, many of the lacks, not realizing that they have brought it upon themselves, not realizing that there is a law of as ye sow, so shall ye reap, not realizing that there is an actual law that if you sow to the Spirit, you'll reap life everlasting. But that if you sow to selfishness, malice, jealousy, envy, hate, greed, lust, you're reaping all of the evils of this world, and then wondering why it happened, forgetting one of the Master's major teachings, that the prayers that you pray secretly are the ones that are rewarded openly. And don't forget that these negative thoughts and acts are as much prayer in our experience as the good deeds we do. Now, to realize for a second that the evil that I do to another, the advantage I take of another, the lying that I do to another, the cheating that I do to another, is being done to me. is, of course, in a negative way, stopping me from it once I realize that. But more important would be the positive angle, the realization that the good that I do is being done unto me would in and of itself transform this entire world. The moment we realize that the dollar we give out is a dollar finding its way back into our own pocket with interest, pressed down and running over, that the forgiveness that we give to another is the very forgiveness coming back to wipe out some of the penalties of our own offenses. The Master gave us that in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our debts, how in proportion as I forgive those who trespass against me. Actually, he could have put it in other words and said, the forgiving you do is the only forgiving that is going to come back to you. Because you set in motion every single wave that hits you, whether it's a gentle, peaceful wave on which you can float, or whether it's a bang-up wave that knocks your head in. It isn't realized that we ourselves are the center from which our own lives are constructed. That we ourselves determine the nature of the lives that will happen to us. We have not been taught, not with conviction and not as a law, that it is true that everything that takes place to an individual must take place through their consciousness. What does not happen in your consciousness is not happening to you. Therefore, if love, cooperation, forgiveness, sharing, if these are not taking place in your consciousness, they cannot happen to you. And of course, they first take place in your consciousness in your dealings with the other. In other words, the bread that you cast upon the water is the bread that returns unto you, and no other. The bread that you do not cast on the water cannot return to you. It can't return because you never turned it out. There can't be a return of that which never was turned. And so it is that once we as individuals, and I speak only of those who hear the voice of the infinite way, if only we can understand that we ourselves are the manufacturers of our own successes and failures, that we determine not only what kind of lives we will lead, but in a sense we are determining what kind of a life goes on out in this world. Because every one of us is a center, and listen, any one of us can change the history of the whole world. Any one. It doesn't take 51% of the world to change before the world changes. One individual can change the world. And if you don't think so, think of Moses. Think of Jesus. Because there are two figures that you know and know well. And see how those two men have changed the history of the world. As a matter of fact, Jesus is such and his teaching is such an important thing in this world that all of the Orient is adopting the Christian teaching of the Testament, not the Christian church teaching, but the Testament teaching, into and alongside of their own teaching, so that regardless of where you go, you find it that way. This may surprise some of you, but in Japan, they have asked for and received a waiver from my New York publisher for all profits on the book, The Art of Meditation, and they've asked and received from me a waiver of royalties so that that book can be given free to any Japanese who wants it, any Japanese who hears of it and desires it. And just imagine how this, that is based on Christian mysticism, will, with the consent of those in high places, be given with and alongside of their own teachings. And then tell me that Jesus Christ hasn't influenced this entire world? Yes, of course. You say it's taken 2,000 years to do it. That's true, and that's not Jesus' fault either. That sin is on the shoulders of those who are responsible for it, and they, I'm sure, are paying their own penalty for it. The point that I would make is this. One individual imbued with a spiritual realization that God is our spiritual Father, yours and mine, and then could search a little deeper into the Master's teaching and discover that he said, take no thought for your life, don't pray to God for your food or your drink. Why? Because I, at the center of your being, that very I that God planted in you, that you call I, that contains your bread and your meat and your wine and your water and the health of your countenance. That presence of God at the center of your being, that presence of God which is closer to you than breathing and nearer than hands and feet, this is your bread, your meat, your wine, your water. Don't pray to God for it, and don't steal for it, and don't lie for it, and don't cheat for it, and don't defraud, because the kingdom of God is within you. And your meat and your wine and your bread and your water and your life eternal, these are all at the center of your own being. Rest and relax and be patient and watch how your good will flow out into your expression, how your business will improve, or your art or your profession, or whatever it is that may be the source of your income. And if those can't do it, you'll inherit it. Not that somebody's going to die to make it happen to you, but that inevitable in the human picture is the passing from human sight. So that in one way or another, you will discover that all that you have sought in life, in the way of friendships, family relationships, supply, recognition, reward, honor, fame, all of these are yours. There's nothing wrong about your having them. The only wrong is the way the world has been getting them. Everything up to war, murder. Whereas, with the first realization of God as Spirit, and as our good being spiritual, not something to be gotten, something to be released from within us. There comes the major difficulty of the student on the spiritual path, the habit of generations to pray and look for material things and circumstances instead of being able to say, if God is spirit, my need is spiritual. Or if God is spirit, the only thing that will fulfill me is something spiritual. So even while I'm out working at my business or profession or art, even while I'm doing that, let me realize within myself that I have been seeking amiss in turning to a God of spirit and asking for things of the earth when it has revealed to me that my kingdom, Christ's kingdom, is not of this world. The things of God are foolishness with man. The things of man are foolishness with God. Therefore, to pray for man's things to God is foolishness. So, to make the very first change in our spiritual life, it becomes necessary to acknowledge God as spirit. Therefore, determine, I will seek God and I will seek of God, but I will seek only spirit. I will seek only spiritual wisdom, spiritual gifts, spiritual realizations, spiritual demonstrations. I will let these human things be the added things, and I will let them be added unto me. Then, with that in mind, and the realization that every individual you meet in your day's travels is actually of your own household and is to be treated as a member of your own household, do you not see that 10 righteous men in a city save a city, that a few thousand of us living in this consciousness immediately transfer it and transform it to others? I couldn't help today. This doesn't always happen, but it did happen today. We were coming up by train from Exeter, and a man got into our compartment. And I never felt quite the rush of sympathy, almost you might say pity, to a man as to that man. There wasn't anything of lack or limitation about him, no evidence of disease, but he took out a cigarette to light it, and you never saw a man clutch. It's the only word I could use. His fingers were like talons, and he was clutching that cigarette. And then when he lit it with a match, he was holding as if these hands couldn't open, as if all they could do was just clutch. And there wasn't any doubt his shoulders were hunched forward in this attitude, that the man was in an attitude of strain, a severe strain that was much more than a temporary thing by the way this clutching was going on. When he put that cigarette in his mouth and took it out of his mouth, you'd think it was going to strangle it. And it touched me so deeply that I had to sit back and meditate. Not to give him a treatment, probably to give myself a treatment. And as I did, I could almost see in back of that man the strain. And I commenced to think of the fact that his father was my father. And therefore his father couldn't treat him any differently than he treated me. To God, there could be no respecter of persons. God was equally his father and my father. And all that the Father hath was his. And as I sat in that stillness for a few moments, I could feel in the background of him the lessening of tension. And I would like you to have seen that man 15 minutes later. The relaxed way in which he sat there, and the way his hands opened completely, and for the whole rest of that trip, there wasn't a sign of clutching. His fingers were open, his hands were open, and his eyes were open. He was a changed man. And that was not for any reason but one. The status as child of God was always his. I couldn't give him that. But it was the recognition of it that set him free. One with God is a majority. And for one individual to be able to sit and realize the spiritual nature of God and his creation, and the universal nature of God's love for God's creation, sets that man free. And I can see that in a lifetime there could be thousands like him set free by one. Now, how many millions could be set free by those in a room? And how many tens of millions can be set free as a few thousand only walk around this earth each day in the realization that those driving on the road beside them, even if they look like road hogs and act like it, but the realization that they aren't, they are the same allness and fullness of God. God is as much their fulfillment as ours. And as we live in this realization, there's no need to pray to God for anything. That which God is, as was proven, already belonged to this man. It needed only recognition, realization. And so it is. All of the wealth that provides us in the States with all this food that has to be burned up each year or thrown overboard in the ocean, the same God, the same love will do that for India and for China and for all of the countries that lack. But it takes something more than a benevolent government that just wants to share its surplus. That won't do it. That won't do anything more for that's a temporary thing, yes. But in the end, it's like bringing over a load of apples and hanging them on your apple tree. That isn't giving you a supply of apples. That's just taking care of your need today for apples. But tomorrow the need is still there. What we've got to do is make your apple trees grow apples. And if you don't know how to do it, your neighbor, knowing the truth, can make your apple trees grow apples. And we, knowing this truth of a universal Father, can make as much food spring up in India and China. I read a report in one of your papers yesterday or Sunday to the effect that all that India needs to supply its entire population is a little farm machinery. That's all they're lacking. It isn't tons of food. It isn't shiploads of food. Of course, that would help them out today and tomorrow. That isn't going to meet their need for next season. But a few shiploads of farm machinery would do it. Now, on the human plane, these governments could easily give it to them, and it would amount to less than scrapping one warship. But that isn't the real solution. The solution is a spiritual one in which we would sit right here in our room or at home and begin to realize, like India or China, you're not separate and apart from God's household. There's no place where India begins and Burma ends, or there's no such thing in the kingdom of God as a border, nor is there such a thing in the kingdom of God as a race. for a religion. There's only God and his offspring. And right in that place, where material sense says there's lack and limitation, I'm seeing God as their Father. And that's all I'm going to stick with. God is their Father. Their Father and my Father. And then watch what that truth, what that knowing will bring forth. So it is, whether it's your neighbor next door whose rose bushes aren't growing, you can make them grow. Just with a realization. There's no such thing as their garden and your garden. There's one principle. It's the same God in that garden as it is in your garden, and eventually you'll see what will happen to that garden. So it is, wherever you meet anyone asking, is there a solution to these world's problems? After once you've demonstrated that you've been able to help one person with this, you'll be able to answer, yes, there is, and I know there is. It's a spiritual solution. And it's going to change the world. Thank you.
Yeah, great to see you here again, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Next week we also start another 40 days cycle, which is the way of gratitude, and you're wholeheartedly invited to join. It's going to be like daily meetings almost every day, probably not the Wednesday. So meeting every day and at different times. There will be a schedule soon, and I hope to see you there too. So Saturday, next week, Saturday at the same time as this meeting starts, we have our introductory meeting. So you're wholeheartedly invited to check it out. And of course you can see that on the website too. For now, thank you so much, and send your healing request whenever you feel like it. We're, say, embracing the all of it, the whole paradox. And what is real will be left. That will always be there. And what isn't real will dissolve by, say, understanding, by meditation, by realization of what is. So thank you so much for joining today, and see you soon.